Most of you bastards know by now how I feel about Nioh 2. To me it is most disappointing game of 2020 after pleasant surprise that was Nioh 1. Nioh 1 had identity issue nonetheless, but showed incredible potential. I hoped Nioh 2 would fix annoyances I had with the first game, but unfortunately Team Ninja just doubled down on bad decision making. When I say identity issue, I mean that as in Nioh can be looked as Souls game or hack and slash action loot grinder RPG like Diablo, just from third person. It has aspects of both, but Souls-like gameplay quickly disappears, and this is where Nioh starts falling apart. As soon as first playthrough or even before is done, game stops being fun for me. A lot of what I'm about to say is down to what you want Nioh to be. If you are fine wasting countless hours trying to get that one random drop that might never occur, crafting bunch of stuff hoping something can lead your build to the next level through RNG, praying for random special effects or random inheritables, replaying same missions over and over again across many difficulties for hours with no real result, mindlessly going through the game doing same shit over and over again with absolutely no fun involved, then you and Nioh are match made in heaven. I for one value my time a lot more, and that is why I would want Nioh to become more Souls-like than what abomination it is right now. So here are some examples what I would have wanted and expected from Nioh 2 in order to evolve beyond the first game, because I truly think Nioh has far more potential than what it is right now. Many times I have said that Nioh has best damn combat system in gaming, with fantastic animations, smooth combat, great moveset and weapon variety. Too bad most of it doesn't matter later on, as game forces you down one path, and that is stick to OP builds. If you plan on using your own skills only to beat the game, without 15 buffs, without same magic and ninjutsu items, without confusion element, well, you are shit out of luck. I mean, it might be doable, but game is not meant to be played that way, and that couldn't be more clear the more you progress. For a grinding game such as this, progressing at extremely slow speed relying on skill without utilizing all damage and defense buffs means incredible frustration after a period of time. As I said, it could be doable, but it is not worth it in the least. Just because it might be doable doesn't mean game is balanced and polished enough to accommodate such playstyle, because it isn't. You might survive jumping off a bridge too, but it still won't make it good, smart and rewarding decision at all. I will divide this video into categories: combat and game system/mechanics, and try to bring to you my vision what I would have liked to see in Nioh 2. Remember that this is my vision and my opinion, so what others think is of no concern to me. Let's start with combat. As I said earlier, best goddamn combat system ever implemented. It is unfortunate most of it will remain unutilized, because the more you play, more you need to rely on outside of melee stuff like buffs, magic and ninjutsu, and keep it as simple as possible during the encounter. Definitely biggest culprit why this is so is enormous damage enemies do, speed of the game, and insane health and key bars at higher difficulties, and bosses not being limited by Nioh rule set like the player is. Quick example are parries. I love parries in Nioh, but more I've progressed, less I have used them. Why? Well, risk is not worth the reward in most cases. Human enemies have usually many movesets, of which about half, raw estimation, can be parried. So not only you need to know which move can be parried, you have to follow fast speed of the game with high number of visual special effects and really time it right, hoping that damage would be really bloody good to make the move worth it, and in a lot of cases it isn't. Not to mention if you mistime the parry, your ass is grass. Expect enemies smelly toe in your face dealing over 4000 damage just because. All of these issues almost completely remove any finesse from the game, and the only skillful thing you will be doing are going to be burst counters, while rest of the combat will be you spamming one or two moves, praying enemy dies before you do. You might say something along the lines, well, game gives you the tools, your choice how to use them. That argument in Nioh's case is utter bollocks, because all of the factors mentioned already. Half of the active skills are either useless or bad, and damage done without 15 buffs is horseshit in later difficulties, making such gameplay incredibly frustrating. So what would I do to change all of this and make Nioh game with more finesse and less reliance on spamming skills, magic and others? Make Nioh play more like in dojo missions, for one. This is where almost whole combat system comes together and fights are genuinely interesting, even though some become ridiculous as hell, mainly because of too much damage from enemies and speed at which they come at you. First thing I would do is reduce speed of the game and add more weight to every movement and weapon. By doing this, game becomes more tactical, with lot more stance switching while trying to find the best approach of attack. Against humans, speed decrease would lead in my opinion to some incredible fights, not only skill based but tactical too. This would also make parries way more viable, but still difficult to execute, and many skills that are useless could most likely find some use with proper damage balancing. Second would be to decrease damage done by enemies and players. Enemies do way too damage with each strike, especially on later difficulties, forcing players to retaliate with OP builds that decimate the bastards. It isn't players' fault, but the way game is designed. With enemies doing less damage, we would use more tools because we would not fear repercussions as much, leaving room for many underutilized skills and playstyles to become viable, giving the game more diversity and overall attractiveness. I would definitely remove almost all buff and debuff spells too, such as protection, steal, weakness, slot, carnage, power pills, healing spells and many other things that affect player and enemy way too much. Player has too many options in that department and not as many effective melee skill options during combat. Offensive jutsus would remain as they are since they are interesting and add lots of variety to the game, but reduce available jutsu slots so player cannot spam like mental. This would mean player would and could focus more on playing the game more tactically and with much more thought. Third thing would be to decrease ki and HP bars from enemies. By having damage reductions across the board, huge HP pulls on bosses should be thing of the past. By reducing ki and HP, I believe almost every attack would be important, but we would still have room for mistakes, allowing us to play with all kinds of stuff. With less ki on bosses, I would also change their AI slightly to become less aggressive and more calculated, which would as well make every attack feel more significant, coming from boss and player because of additional impact on now lesser ki bar. This leads me to another change, and that would be enabled parries versus yokai for all weapons. I understand the thought process behind the inability to parry yokai enemies, as they are physically much stronger and the swing from such physically superior enemy would overpower puny humans. However, this is a video game, where we fight things like Yatsu, Otakemaru and flying houses. Simple change would be to alter parries versus yokais with more movement and maneuvers. Let's say Yatsu attacks with tail and we parry. That parry could lead to us jumping over the incoming tail and slashing it while it travels under us. Might not be the best example, but you get what I mean. There are also many cool grappling skills like Izuna drop and Merciless Barrage that can't be used on yokai at all, which is a damn shame. That dagger attack is underwhelming at best. Whoever thought about putting so many ranged enemies with insane fire rate should be banned from making any decisions in any game ever after Nioh 2. Not only this raises annoyance through the roof, it kills melee momentum, which in turn forces players to again dumb it down as much as possible and stick to one or two best weapon skills that would finish the fight as quickly as possible to counter the annoyance. Now let's talk about game systems and mechanics. Thing you need to know about me is I absolutely despise RNG. It is least imaginative and the absolute worst way of doing anything in games. When you don't know how to design your own rewarding system with proper challenges and rewards for completing them, put in RNG and you are sorted. Players would get addicted to it to some extent, because that is how psychologically luck affects us humans. So you forget all the wasted time but feel relief and happiness when and if eventually you get the job. RNG systems serve one purpose, and that is to artificially extend game time, forcing players to play the game for much longer to search for that brief moment of happiness that would erase all the time wasted. Nioh is one of the biggest single-player culprits I have ever seen when it comes to repetition and RNG. Everything here is RNG except end mission rewards, which generally don't matter as much. Armor that drops from bosses, weapons, special effects appearing on armor and weapons, special effects while tempering are all random. Rarity is random. Plus enhancements on weapon and armor are random. Smithing texts for weapons and armor random. Additional bullshit like star effects are random. Inheritables random. Not to mention secret skills that can drop from bosses random. Talking about insanely extended game time. I have beaten that spear wielding cunt Mataza over 50 times and triple threat secret skill didn't drop yet. Same as his accessory, and that is part of armor set. How can anyone find this system appealing and fun is beyond me. I always try to look things from many different perspectives, but I can never defend systems like these and people enjoying them. Just can't wrap my head around it. Don't even know where to start, but I would honestly erase probably whole Nioh system from history. Definitely remove almost any sort of RNG and make rewards fixed. Example, how to deal with smithing texts for weapons, armor and skills. By defeating a boss on each difficulty, fixed smithing text drops. Let's say during first difficulty each boss drops armor and weapon smithing texts. Next difficulty, bosses drop skills smithing texts, and so on. Such system would be far more rewarding. My vision is that boss fights with all the combat changes could be slower and more methodical, leading to increased challenge, making acquiring these texts a lot harder, but based on skill and not RNG. Tempering sucks donkey cock, because given effects are of course randomized, with some stacking and some don't. It is pain in the arse trying to get the ones you want. Want a simple fix that would make the game less frustrating and more enjoyable? Give us all special effects to choose from, not only 3 per bracket. Put them into tiers like they are now, but list them all, not just measly 3 per goddamn bracket. This is one of the most obvious examples how lazy and unimaginative RNG systems are and how they artificially extend game time, offering nothing of value. Also, many special effects are pointless, and there are far too many. In case of all effects being listed like in my previous suggestion, it wouldn't be an issue. However, when only 3 are listed per bracket and many are never or rarely going to be used, it becomes an issue. Later on, everything is about damage output, and you can't afford to put anything else, otherwise build becomes ineffective. If these suggestions would be implemented, then thank the fucking heritable system would be pointless and would have to be removed. Horrible system that adds even more bollocks on top of all the other ones. Also, familiarity would have to go, which is yet another pointless thing that only slows down build optimization. In Nioh 2, devs have decided to continue throwing shit on top of each other more and more, hoping something would stick. All of these new things just move the game away from the amazing combat system. Yokai abilities, cores and anima is not a bad idea, but in this game it is unnecessary due to already present vast and fantastic melee combat. Especially considering half of these yokai abilities are useless or bad. It is cool that we can get core from every single enemy type, but I don't see a point in leveling them up. It ends up as yet another thing that slows you down, wasting bunch of time scrolling through manage cores option. Honestly, I would remove whole cores, anima and yokai ability system, but if it needs to stay, then this is what I would change. By defeating each enemy type, core drops instantly from the very first kill and only then. Instead of leveling cores with same ones that clog the inventory, make each core scale with player level. Also make every core have all special effect slots fixed, giving them more uniqueness. This would solve cores clogging inventory and wasting bunch of time going through them fusing, using resting rights and other bollocks. Equipment that is not part of a set in vast majority of cases is useless. Instead of removing such equipment completely, they have decided to add even more RNG to the game by making gear that is not part of the set now part of grace sets. There are many different grace sets and each non-set related equipment can be part of each set, by the grace of RNG of course. Talking about just throwing shit on top of each other. I would remove all gear that is not part of a set and also remove grace system completely. That would severely reduce RNG and I think most players would be happy with this change. There are simply far too many sets in the game and far too much equipment. In my opinion, Nioh really needs a less is more approach. Last thing I want to mention is how whole story and difficulty system is structured. A lot of Nioh players are oblivious of fact that to get to the end they need to redo same missions over and over again on each difficulty. This is just stupid if you think about it. However, that is why developers have thrown so much shit on top of each other so that players don't even think about that fact, because they are either mindlessly going through inventory items, managing cores, repeating same missions over and over again for lucky drops and so on. There is no need for so many difficulties. Especially because Nioh is structured that way, it is almost mandatory to try to get till the end. Otherwise you miss out on many things like Yasakani, improved builds through better gear, locked special effects, ethereal gear, increased core level limit and so on. Imagine all of these changes I have mentioned in one cohesive story, not disjointed like it is now with no real meaning, in a single playthrough. And not through 5 repeated playthroughs by skipping most of the content anyway just to reach hard difficulty. What is the bloody point of this whole repetition besides extending game time? Think about it for a second. Think about how bad this design is. To conclude, I would like Nioh to play more like Dark Souls with these changes and be less mindless hack and slash action RPG loot grinder like Diablo. Nioh has far more potential to be reduced to just this. But Team Ninja have confirmed to me they are unable to change their ways and evolve this franchise into something far greater. Instead, they have decided to do almost everything the same because it is easier that way, thinking players would gobble this shit up again and again. Many do, but there are also many of us who see Nioh for what it is and what it could be. Team Ninja have stated they have no plans for Nioh 3 at this point, which I applaud, because I don't think they have it in them to improve. Instead, they would just add bunch more shit on top of all this, making the game even less fun than it is now. Anyway, that would be all. One thing I would like to ask is, would you like me to make this type of video into a series titled Things I Would Change, and do it for every game I play? Thank you all for watching and see you soon, you beautiful bastards.